So the government has come out and told Sport New Zealand to control, alt, delete its transgender guidelines. These guidelines have been in operation since 2022. Originally, they were asked to review their guiding principles on trans inclusion in sport. Now being told to get rid of them altogether, which means individual sporting organisations will continue to make the calls on whether or what the policy is around trans people in sport. Save Women's Sport Australasia has been lobbying against transgender women sports inclusion, arguing while everyone has the right to play sport, no one has the right to play in any category that they choose. We are going to speak to a proponent of trans inclusion in sport in just a second with Jennifer Shields, but first Ro Edge from Save Women's Sport Australasia. Ro, good morning.
Good morning. Can I just correct you there, Ryan?
Sorry.
We haven't been opposing their inclusion. We've been opposing their inclusion in the female category because of their male advantage.
Quite an important distinction. No one is saying, not in this directive from the government, nor from Sport New Zealand, nor from your organisation, that there is no place for trans people in sport.
Yeah, we want everyone to be included in sport because of the immense physical and emotional benefits that it brings. But we play sport with our bodies, not our identities. And to ensure fairness and safety and opportunities for females, our category needs to be protected. You know, we have categories in sport for very good reason. You know, for instance, in rugby, they have an under 85 kg category, and it's a hard line. So anyone under 85 kgs can play in that category. Anyone over can't. And that protects the fairness and safety of those male players.
Right. I think people understand what the concerns are. What is, and now we've had a directive, is it actually going to make a difference? Because they were only guidelines to begin with.
Yeah, but they were guidelines issued by the sports authority that holds the funding levers for sports in New Zealand.
And were they threatening to withdraw funding if people didn't follow them?
No, but they have withdrawn funding, and we saw that with the NZRU when they didn't get the gender balance on their board properly. They have shown that they will use funding as a lever, and we've heard from sports that they were getting legal advice that they should follow them to not risk their funding as well.
Ro, why have you got involved with this personally?
Because I had a daughter who represented New Zealand, a niece that went to the Olympics. So we are a proud sporting family, and we want to see those pathways for our female athletes continue. And community sport is that pathway. You know, we talk about this only being important for elite sport, but if fairness and safety matters, it matters at all levels of sport.
Ro, appreciate your time this morning. Thanks so much for being with me. That's Ro Edge from Save Women's Sport Australasia. Just so that everybody is clear on exactly what we are talking about, the overarching principle in what the guidelines were for sporting organisations, and it's community sports, by the way, not elite sports, but the overarching principle was that transgender people can take part in sports in the gender they identify with. So if you were born male, but you identify as female, as a woman, then you can play in women's sport. That guideline now doesn't exist. It's been scrubbed from the website of Sport New Zealand. Joining us now, and we'd love your views, by the way, Ryan at nzherald.co.nz, but joining us now to discuss this further is Jennifer Shields from Qtopia, the Managing Director. Jennifer, good morning.
Good morning.
So, I'm assuming you're not happy with this. Can you just tell us why it is in community sport that somebody who has the advantages of being born male in a boxing ring, for example, should be able to take on women?
We're talking about community sport here. We're not talking about elite competitive sport. We're talking about the ability of people like you and me to wander down to their local social sports team and play for a season casually. You know, we're not talking about elite competition. Trans people as a group of all genders are just as diverse as any other gender, you know, just as there are men and women that perform really highly in their sporting categories. You know, we also have men and women who play at, you know, social levels. But what we have really good data for is the fact that trans people here in Aotearoa, New Zealand, engage with organised recreation and sport at a community level at about half the rate of the general population. And that's really worrying because we know the benefit that recreation has on your well-being.
Yeah, but look at the firestorm that it's caused. Can you understand If you are in a boxing ring, you're a woman, you're in a boxing ring, and the person that is punching you in the head, with gloves on, was born a male, had the advantages of being born a male, and we know scientifically that there are huge advantages to be born male in terms of muscle mass and development.
The science and evidence on that isn't as settled as people like Roe Edge would want you to believe. We are constantly having new pieces of research that really lay threats
So you're telling me that men, I mean, come on, Jennifer, let's be real. If you're born male, then you have, not only in terms of the amount of muscle that you have, but the speed at which it develops through puberty. That's a scientific fact.
It's not grounded in the evidence, though. We have really excellent research evidence showing that the disparities between trans women and cis women in competitive sport aren't as clear as it seems. And I think you can see that considering the fact that trans people have been eligible to play in the Olympics since 2004 and haven't won a medal. Like, we are not seeing the absolute takeover of competitive sport as people would want you to see.
What evidence are you talking about? Because the only interviews I've done with scientists, and I've done a couple of them over the years now, they have all said the same thing, that is an undeniable biological fact. What evidence are you talking about?
Talking about a research paper published last year that looked at some really specific areas of like physical attainment that relate to sport. So things like grip strength and jump length, and found that the disparity between trans and cis women on those things that relate to specific areas of sport is not the disparity isn't there.
But Jennifer, let's just be real. If you look at a bunch of dudes and then you look at a bunch of women, generally the men are like taller and musclier.
Yeah, I think we're getting really distracted from what these guidelines were here to do. We're not talking about, we're not talking about competitive sport. We're talking about, and the guidelines aren't even talking about, who can play what and where. They are talking about protection from harassment and bullying and, safety and the ability to participate. And what this guidance and direction from the government has done has removed the word transgender from Sport NZ's website entirely.
Here's a question for you then, Jennifer. If it's about inclusion and about people feeling accepted and not being bullied, do you think that societal acceptance of trans people in sport is now better as a result of these guidelines or worse?
I think there are probably two different elements to it. I think there's the broader social discussion in particular that is happening online and in the media. And I think there is what's happening on the ground for community sporting organisations, a huge number of which were involved in the consultation and development of these guidelines in 2022. Those views aren't being heard in this political directive. This hasn't come from the sporting codes. This has come from the government.
All right. Jennifer, just finally, I spoke to Ro earlier on a radio show I did this morning, but just asked her, do you hate trans people? Because one of the things that annoys me about these debates is that you're either anti-trans or you're anti-woman. I mean, you can be both. Do you think Ro hates trans people?
No, I don't think that she does. I think that she is advocating for what she believes is right, but I unfortunately think it's misguided, and I think she is missing the harm that she is, the advocacy that she does is having on our communities.
Appreciate your time this morning, Jennifer. Thank you very much for being with me. Jennifer Shields,
Thank you.
Qtopia Managing Director, talking about the directive from the government changing the way that our community, if you've got, kids who play sport, this is the type of event that would affect them rather than your elite sports, which are a completely different kettle of fish.